Okay, so Taylor Swift has just pulled off a very, very interesting release tactic, and it's not just about the music video. So for those that didn't see what happened with Taylor Swift's new track, Opalite, it tells us something very huge about how streaming platforms, how YouTube, how the Billboard charts even are functioning in 2026, how those relationships are coming together and separating as well. So let's unpack it. So what happened? Well, Taylor Swift just released a new music video for her new single called Opalite, but it wasn't released in the usual way. It wasn't released on YouTube. There wasn't a premiere page. There wasn't all of that stuff. Sometimes we see a lot of artists basically release a music video the night before a track actually goes out on streaming platforms and that sort of thing. This didn't happen with Taylor Swift's new single. So instead of dropping it first on YouTube, like we would presume, she actually premiered the full video, the full music video, on Spotify and Apple Music, February 6th, and the YouTube release of the music video was delayed by 2 days, right? So, really interesting tactic, not something I can say I've actually seen before. Like I said, typically we see stuff go on YouTube before it goes out on other platforms. We've seen with the new J. Cole release that he's only used YouTube and Instagram as distribution platforms for his online presence. And, typically we see a lot of artists, it's all about YouTube, right? YouTube is the place where it needs to be. But what this meant by Taylor Swift doing this is that fans could only watch this video in the first 2 days on subscription-based platforms, right? So Apple Music and Spotify, subscription-based platforms. And that's something that's very unusual for a pop star to do of her scale, of her reach, of her audience size. We can check out the article here by MBW, so it covers the details which we just talked about. Taylor Swift will release the music video for Opalite exclusively on Spotify Premium and Apple Music on Friday, Feb 6th at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Video will not be available on YouTube until Super Bowl Sunday, meaning the pop star is windowing a major video premiere on paid streaming platforms before its YouTube release. Now, obviously, this is already, we're past that date. The video is on YouTube now. I checked it out earlier. It's currently #1 trending on the music chart, which is, what I guess you'd expect from a big Taylor Swift release. 7.4 million views right now on the view count, almost 500,000 likes. And it's trending. It's what you'd expect from Taylor. But to understand why she did this, why she released her music video solely on Spotify and Apple Music for the first couple of days, we need to basically talk about how there is a major industry shift and something that happened actually earlier this year as well. And this is actually cited in the article which reports on this, which basically talks about how this comes after YouTube's decision to withdraw from Billboard US charts, right? So let's break this down. So in January 2026, YouTube stopped or announced that it's going to stop providing Billboard with its streaming data, meaning that YouTube views will no longer count toward the Billboard Hot 100 or other Billboard charts. Now, this is insane. This is like a crazy development, and we're seeing the results of this now with things like this Taylor Swift music video premiere. Now you might ask why did they decide to do this? Obviously YouTube is a huge platform for a bunch of artists, especially the biggest artists in the world, right? Like YouTube videos is what is consumed consistently daily. There's a consistent stream of catalog. There's a consistent demand for it on YouTube. And that is where it happens. Millions and millions of views every single day for individual artists, let alone, everybody, are happening. And so to take those numbers out of, Billboard's stream count, and therefore they won't count anymore, not only will it have a huge impact on the overall data and actually who finishes where in the charts, etc., but it will also going forward have impact, as again, we're seeing here with artist release strategies. And why? Because unfortunately or fortunately, whichever side of the fence you're on, people still give a crap about charts. And, we discussed this chart thing in my previous video where we were talking about, you know, the streaming model and chart positioning and that sort of thing, and the ratio. You know, we'll talk about my opinion in a second, but I'm of the opinion that really, like, it's so dated, man. Like, it's still a ratio of streams counting toward 1 unit sale. Like, bro, like, majority of consumption is streaming now, right? So why do the charts not reflect that, really? You know, that's how it potentially should be. But we'll talk about that. So, you know, it says here, we'll share the article again. Swift's decision to premiere the video first on subscription platforms allows YouTube's withdrawal from Billboard US charts, which took effect on January 16th. So we'll get into this. But basically, YouTube's head of music, Leo Cohen, obviously famed industry exec, announced this move at the end of 2025 in December, one day after Billboard revealed changes to its chart methodology that narrowed the weighting gap between paid and ad-supported streams. This is the interesting bit, right? This is the nooks and crannies of it. This is where the geeks geek out. This is where the data people in industry are like debating this over lunch in the label offices or whatever, right? Under Billboard's previous formula, so what they've changed from, one album unit, so one sale on the Billboard chart, equaled 1,250 paid streams or 3,750 ad-supported streams, a 1-to-3 ratio. The new methodology tightens that to 1-to-2.5, with one unit now equaling 1,000 paid streams, so they dropped the limit to 1,000 paid streams, or 2,500 ad-supported streams, right? So the ratio has dropped very slightly by 0.5. So now you only need 2,500 ad-supported streams to get one sale. And you need 1,000 paid streams to get one sale. Just so you understand the difference here, the paid streams are the streams that come from people that pay for the subscription, that pay the $12.99 a month or whatever it is on Spotify nowadays. Same on YouTube Music, same on Apple Music. And then ad-supported are for those that listen to the tracks but obviously aren't paying, so they have limited features, limited access, limited playlists, that sort of thing. 2,500 of those streams only account for one sale. 2,500 streams, right? This deep how big a number that is of streams to count for one sale on the Billboard chart, right? So this change basically, it stemmed from a disagreement over how Billboard weighs these streams, right? So Billboard gives, as you can see from the example we just looked at, Billboard gives more weight. It's worth more to have paid streams, subscription streams, over ad-supported streams, over people that aren't paying for music. Now, on the surface of it, I think you could say that makes sense because, this is paid for streams. Therefore, those people that are paying money to listen to music, they're generating money for the industry. It's going to get paid out, and it dribbles down into the fractions of pennies that artists get nowadays from streaming. But there's still value there. What we don't actually see is how much money ad revenue is bringing in. And they might report it. I haven't dug into those reports yet. But how much ad revenue is being brought in by those ad-supported listeners, right? How much money are this platforms making from those listeners, because they've got such a big audience of ad-supported listeners, and therefore the brands that pay to advertise on these platforms, pay a certain premium because of the amount of listeners they have on their platform, whether they're paying or not, right? So that's where the difference is. That's where Billboard are weighting paid listens more than they're weighting ad-supported listeners. So if YouTube views... So let's break it down. So YouTube aren't happy about this, right? So Leo Cohen basically, we'll bring it up here as well on this, where Cohen argued. So Leo Cohen argued that the changes did not go far enough, insisting that all streams should be counted equally regardless of whether they come from paid subscriptions or ad-supported services. Billboard uses an outdated formula that weights subscription-supported streams higher than ad-supported. This doesn't reflect how fans engage with music today and ignores the massive engagement from fans who don't have a subscription. So this is key, and this is where I agree with Leo, what Leo's saying. Like, at the end of the day, you can't measure engagement whether someone pays for something or not, pays for access to a streaming service or not, right? The way that the industry works nowadays and how music is accessed and streamed, how can you fairly weight that? And also, like, the number, I've always had this issue, I've always had this conversation about where do these flipping numbers come from? Like, why is it decided that 2,500 ad-supported streams equals one sale? I understand there's probably mythology behind it with regards to the numbers and the mathematics of it, right? Of the revenue. Like, how much was an album? How much was an average album? Or how much was an average single back in the day? Your $2.99, your $3.99, your $8.99, your $12.99 for an album. How does then that equate to what's going on today and how much people pay for subscriptions? You do the maths, you divide it, blah, blah, blah. I understand how they could potentially have got to that number. But if you just think about what is going on, like, it's just an insane amount of streams to equal one sale. So that's the first thing. And now, here's the other thing, right? So if YouTube are no longer counting views, or the charts are no longer counting views toward chart placement, there is less incentive for artists to drop or strategize their video on YouTube first, right? Because, well, they still want to chart, they still want to Billboard, and if Taylor Swift puts up her video and those how many ever million views, those 7 million views that she got in that first couple of days or whatever, a huge portion of them will be from ad-supported viewers, right? Like, the majority, I would say it's fair to say the majority of YouTube users are not paid subscribers yet. And so out of that 7 million, I don't know, we could guesstimate like 5-6 million of them. That's being conservative about it, are not paying for YouTube Premium or YouTube Music, right? So that's 7 million views, arguably, quote unquote, wasted for the campaign that could have counted toward the charts if they were consumed on, say, a streaming platform that people are paying for, or if they were consumed. Yeah, so if they were consumed on a streaming platform that people were paid for, right? Because right now, of that 7 million, you take out how many are actually from the US, and then you divide it by the ratio, and then you split it by ad and non-ad, premium and ad. Then you divide it by the ratio, and then you get to apply the number of Billboard sales, that units that counts for, right? So it's a whole process, and this is why this change, for artists and campaigns and labels that actually care about chart placement, which, don't get me wrong, it is still important optically, right? Optically, it still matters. This is what's going to happen in future if this continues. And this is what's led to Taylor Swift's strategy, right? So by Swift giving 2 days of exclusive access to this music video on Spotify and Apple, platforms whose streams do still contribute to the Billboard charts, to the formula, Swift is taking those millions of views and stacking countable engagement before the video even hits YouTube, right? So that demand in those first couple of days, where the Swifties cannot wait, they cannot wait to watch the video on YouTube. They have to go check it out on Spotify, Apple. So that's creative. It is strategic. It's very strategic. And, the campaign is prioritizing platforms that help drive these chart numbers instead of views that will now no longer count to the Billboard Hot 100. So what could it mean? What could it mean for the industry? I mean, it might seem a little bit nerdy to break this down, but it's actually a significant shift in how artists could roll out their bigger releases now that YouTube will stop reporting to the Billboard charts. And it is a really big, it's a big deal in the industry. It's a big deal, We might see more of this now. We might see, again, we did a whole video on how the future of Spotify and how it looks. You can go check that out. A link in the description. It's on the end screen. It's in the cards, etc. But we might start to see music videos no longer revolving around YouTube. Personally, I think this is, it's a potential It's what a story like this may indicate. I personally don't think that will happen. I think everything is gearing more toward YouTube, where culture lives, where monetization happens for artists and for the music industry. I feel like that is what's happening. But we could see more and more artists do this if you know, they're centering campaigns around chart position. What else could we see? Well, subscription platform engagement might become a bigger focus for chart strategy, you know, where platforms, how engaged subscribers could become a bigger focus for the industry. And labels and artists might start thinking about, you know, I mean, they already do this, but they might start thinking more about optimizing their release windows based on where plays count, right? Rather than, you know, obviously there's a lot of physical strategy behind these chart campaigns and dropping physical singles first, because that ratio is 1-for-1. Like, one sale is one unit on the Billboard chart. They can now begin to tier streaming as well. You know, if this stuff continues to happen where certain platforms aren't actually contributing to the chart, well then why are we bothering with them? You know, that could be the perspective that the labels may take as well. Because at the end of the day, if views on YouTube aren't going to move the needle for artists on the charts, why would they give their biggest content away for free, taking away the monetization aspect, right? Because let's face it, Swifty got money, bro. Like she don't need no money. But that's my opinion. You know, that's what's going on in the industry. Let me know your thoughts on this. You know, let me know why you think why else she might have done this. Why else might the team might have done this? Was it a smart move, or are we entering a world where, you know, YouTube is beginning to lose relevance as the premier space for the video? And you know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Comment below what you think. You think this was a smart move by Taylor and the team? Do you think it was a bit off key? Yeah, would love to hear your comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the hype button, comment please for more breakdowns like this. I'm enjoying doing this. I hope you're enjoying it too, and looking forward to doing the next one. Peace.